Jake Morrison had been staring at the same screen for 3 hours now, and his eyes burned from the blue light that filled the communications bay of Earth Defense Station Vigilant. The coffee in his mug had gone cold 2 hours ago, but he did not care because something strange was happening on his monitor, and it made his stomach twist into knots. He was a lieutenant commander in the Earth Defense Forces, and his job was simple enough on most days, which involved monitoring deep space for any unusual signals or transmissions that might indicate alien activity. For 3 years he had done this job, and for 3 years he had found nothing but empty static and the occasional burst of cosmic radiation that meant absolutely nothing to anyone. Today was different, and Jake knew it the moment the quantum decryption array started flashing red warnings across his secondary monitor. The system had picked up something big, and it was transmitting on frequencies that Earth scientists had theorized aliens might use but had never actually detected before now. The encryption was heavy and complex, but the new decryption software that the eggheads down in research and development had installed last month was tearing through it like paper. Jake watched as line after line of alien text appeared on his screen, and then the translation program kicked in and started converting the symbols into English. What he read made his blood turn to ice in his veins. The document was formatted like something he might have seen back in college, and it had a header that read, Zephron Imperial Academy Advanced Conquest Studies Program. Below that was a course, number, and a date that when converted to Earth time was from 3 weeks ago. Then came the title of what appeared to be an assignment, and Jake read it 3 times to make sure his eyes were not playing tricks on him. Preliminary Extinction Protocol Case Study, Terra 3, which is Earth. Jake felt his hands start to shake as he scrolled down through the document, and the more he read, the worse it got. This was not a military briefing or a battle plan from some hostile alien empire preparing to invade Earth. This was a homework assignment for students, and the assignment was to plan out the complete destruction of humanity in the most efficient way possible. The document included a grading rubric that awarded points for creativity and resource management and minimizing casualties on the alien side, while maximizing deaths on Earth. There were bonus points available for what the document called innovative approaches to cultural erasure and elegant solutions to resistance suppression. Jake kept reading, and his horror grew with every paragraph. The assignment had been given by someone called Instructor Vexel, and the due date was approximately 3 months from now in Earth time. Students were expected to submit detailed plans, including timelines and resource allocations and projected casualty figures. The document even included suggestions for research topics like analyzing human military capabilities and identifying population centers for maximum impact and developing biological agents tailored to human physiology. But what really made Jake want to vomit was the introductory paragraph, where Instructor Vexel explained why Earth had been chosen for this assignment. The planet Terra 3 presents an ideal subject for entry-level extinction planning, due to its inhabitants' negligible technological development and lack of faster-than-light capability. Human civilization shows no awareness of galactic civilization and poses zero defensive threat, making this an excellent opportunity for students to practice extinction protocols in a low-risk environment. They thought humans were primitive and helpless and perfect targets for students to practice genocide on. Jake slammed his hand down on the emergency comm button that connected directly to Commander Helen Pierce, who was the ranking officer on the station. His voice cracked when he spoke into the microphone, and he had to clear his throat twice before the words came out right. Commander Pierce, you need to get down to Communications Bay immediately, and this cannot wait. Helen arrived 7 minutes later, which was fast even by military standards, and she was still adjusting her uniform jacket when she walked through the door. She was a career officer with 20 years in the Defense Forces, and Jake had never seen her look rattled by anything, but the expression on his face must have warned her that something was very wrong. What is it, Morrison? And this better be worth pulling me out of a meeting with the station director. Jake just pointed at his screen and stepped aside so Helen could read the translated document herself. He watched her face as she scrolled through the pages, and he saw her expression change from irritation to confusion to absolute fury. Her jaw clenched tighter with every paragraph, and by the time she reached the grading rubric, her hands were gripping the edge of his desk so hard her knuckles turned white. They are treating us like a homework assignment, Helen whispered, and her voice was barely audible. We are a training exercise for their students. Jake brought up the additional files that the decryption array had pulled from the alien transmission, and there were dozens of them. Student submissions had already started coming in, even though the official deadline was still months away. Each file contained detailed plans for how to exterminate humanity, and some of them were horrifyingly creative. One student proposed releasing a manufactured virus that would sterilize all humans within 3 generations, allowing for what they called a clean extinction with minimal infrastructure damage. Another suggested redirecting several asteroids to impact major population centers, and then following up with robotic hunting units to eliminate survivors. A third student had designed a plan to poison Earth atmosphere with chemicals that would be harmless to most alien species but lethal to mammals. Each submission included casualty projections written with the same clinical detachment that a student might use when calculating math problems. 8 billion deaths were referred to as an acceptable educational outcome, and one student had even included a cost-benefit analysis showing how the resources saved by efficient extinction would offset the expense of the operation. Helen scrolled through file after file, and Jake could see the rage building behind her eyes. These were not military officers planning a war, and these were not conquerors driven by hatred or fear. These were students doing homework and treating the murder of every man, woman, and child on Earth like it was just another class project to boost their grade point average. "Get me Director Carson on the secure line right now," Helen ordered, and her voice was steady, but Jake could hear the steel underneath. Humanity just became someone's homework, and it is time we taught them a lesson they will never forget. Jake initiated the priority channel to Earth Command, and while he waited for the connection to establish, he noticed one more detail in the intercepted files that made his blood run even colder. Several students had already begun what they called the preliminary observation phase, which meant they were watching Earth right now and studying human behavior and mapping out cities and military installations. They were doing their research, like good students should, and none of them had any idea that their homework assignment had been intercepted. The connection to Earth Command finally came through, and Director Benjamin Carson's face appeared on the main screen. He looked annoyed at being disturbed until he saw the expression on Helen's face. "This better be important. Commander, and I have the World Council breathing down my neck about the defense budget." Helen did not waste time with pleasantries, and she simply forwarded the translated documents to Carson's secure terminal. Jake watched the director's face as he read through the files, and he saw the same transformation that had happened with Helen. Annoyance became shock, and shock became cold, hard rage. "How long until their deadline?" Carson asked, and his voice was quiet and dangerous. 3 months, sir, give or take a few weeks, depending on how their calendar converts to ours." Carson was quiet for a long moment, and then he nodded slowly. "Get every department head on a secure channel within the hour, and I want full analysis of these transmissions and their source location and every piece of intel we can gather on this Zephron Imperial Academy. If these aliens think they can practice genocide on humanity, they are about to learn a very hard lesson." The screen went dark, and Helen turned to Jake with an expression he had never seen on her face before. It was not fear, and it was not even anger anymore. It was something colder and more determined. "Start pulling everything you can from that transmission, and I want to know where it came from and how many students are involved and what kind of technology they have. We are going to crash their entire class, Morrison, and when we are done, they will never assign homework like this again." Jake turned back to his monitors and got to work, and as he dug deeper into the alien files, he found even more disturbing details. The Zephron Imperial Academy had been doing this for centuries, and Earth was just the latest in a long line of species that had been used as practice targets for their students. He found archived assignments dating back hundreds of years, with names of alien civilizations he had never heard of. The Kralix and the Centauri and the Vorn and dozens of others. All extinct now, and all of them had been homework assignments for Zephron students learning the art of conquest. But there was one crucial difference between those extinct species, and humanity, and Jake realized it as he compiled his data for the emergency meeting. None of those other species had known what was C. Director Benjamin Carson stood in the main conference room of Earth Command headquarters, and behind him were massive holographic displays showing the intercepted Zephron documents in all their horrifying detail. Around the table sat representatives from every major nation on Earth, along with military commanders and scientists and intelligence officers who had been pulled from their regular duties for this emergency meeting. The room was dead silent as everyone read through the translated files, and Carson could see the same progression of emotions on every face. Disbelief first, and then anger, and then cold determination. "We are not going to wait for these students to complete their homework," Carson said, and his voice cut through the silence like a knife. "We are going to crash their entire class." Commander Lisa Bennett from the Tactical Response Division stepped forward and activated another holographic display that showed a star map with one system, highlighted in red. "We have identified the location of the Zephyron, Imperial Academy, and it is on their homeworld, which they call Zephyros Prime, and our calculations put it at approximately 47 light-years from Earth. Intelligence suggests that over 3,000 students are currently enrolled in their Advanced Conquest Studies program. 3,000 future military commanders learning how to commit genocide," Chief Engineer Paul Richards added, and his face was grim. "And we are just one of many species they have used as practice targets over the centuries. We found archived assignments in their database dating back almost 400 years. The Kralix and the Centauri and the Vorn and at least 30 other species. All of them are extinct now, and all of them were homework assignments just like us." Captain Amy Sullivan of the ESS Defiance leaned forward in her chair, and her eyes were hard. "We have a narrow window of opportunity here, and the students are still in what they call their observation phase. They believe we are primitive and unaware of their existence and completely helpless. We can use that assumption against them." Carson nodded and brought up a new display showing technical specifications for Earth's newest spacecraft. "We are going to do something that has never been attempted before, and we are going to take the fight directly to them, not to their military installations and not to their border outposts. We are going to hit them where it hurts most, which is their academy and their classroom, and their sense of superiority." The plan that Carson outlined was audacious and dangerous and maybe even insane, but everyone in the room understood why it was necessary. A small strike team would use humanity experimental fold drive technology to jump directly into the Zephyros system and bypass all of their outer defenses. The fold drive was Earth's most closely guarded secret, and it was technology that the Zephyrons clearly did not know existed because none of their intelligence assessments mentioned anything about human faster-than-light capability. That ignorance would be their downfall. Lisa pulled up detailed schematics of the Zephyron Imperial Academy that had been extracted from their own network. The Academy is hosting what they call Progress Presentation Day in exactly 3 weeks, and that is when students will be showing their preliminary plans for the Earth extinction project to their professors and peers. Security will be focused on keeping students in line and not on external threats because they have never been attacked on their homeworld before. We can use that overconfidence. What are our advantages? Paul Richards asked, and he was already running calculations. On his datapad, Amy stood up and activated a comparison chart that showed human technology next to Zephyron technology. "We have been analyzing their systems from the intercepted transmissions, and what we found is surprising. While the Zephyrons have been busy conquering primitive worlds and building their empire, we have been innovating out of necessity. Our computer systems are more advanced than theirs by at least 2 decades. Our artificial intelligence is faster and more adaptable. Our weapons miniaturization is far beyond anything they have. They have been fighting species that cannot fight back, and so they have gotten lazy." Carson pulled up profiles of the strike team that had been assembled in secret over the past week. 50 of our best operators and engineers and computer specialists and combat veterans. We go in quiet and we make a statement that cannot be ignored, and we extract before they even understand what happened. But not before we accomplish our primary objectives. "What are those objectives?" someone from the back of the room asked. Carson smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "First, we delete every single file they have on Earth, and on every other species they are currently studying. We erase centuries of research and tactical data. Second, we plant a virus in their network that will activate if any Zephyron ship approaches our solar system without explicit permission. The virus will broadcast the contents of their homework assignment across every communication channel in the galactic community. Every species out there will know what the Zephyrons teach their students. Third, and most important, we deliver a message that they will never forget." "What message?" Lisa asked. "That Earth is not homework," Carson said, and his voice was hard as steel. "We are the final exam, and they just failed it." The room erupted in determined approval, and Carson could see that everyone understood what was at stake. This was not just about stopping one classroom assignment, And this was about sending a message to the entire galaxy that humanity would not be victims, that some species fought back when threatened, and that underestimating Earth was a fatal mistake. Colonel Ryan Foster, who would be leading the strike team, stood up and addressed the room. "We leave in 72 hours, and every member of my team understands the risks. This is a one-way mission if things go wrong, but none of us care about that. What we care about is making sure that no species ever looks at Earth and thinks we are easy prey again. What we care about is teaching these Zephron students a lesson about the cost of casual genocide." The technical team started breaking down into working groups to finalize the mission details. The fold drive would need to be calibrated perfectly to drop the strike team close enough to Zephyros Prime to avoid detection, but far enough out that they would not trigger any automated defense systems. The infiltration suits that would disguise the human team as Zephrons were being manufactured, using biological data extracted from the intercepted transmissions. The weapons were being modified to pass through Zephron security scanners, which apparently were designed to detect energy weapons, but not the kinetic and plasma hybrid systems that Earth had developed. Jake Morrison, who had discovered the original transmission, sat in the back of the room and watched the planning unfold. He felt a strange mix of emotions running through him: pride that humanity was fighting back, and fear that this might start a war they could not win, and anger that this situation existed at all. 3,000 students were learning how to murder his entire species, and they were doing it with the same casual attitude that Earth students might study history or mathematics. Helen Pierce sat down next to him, and she must have sensed what he was feeling. "We are doing the right thing," she said quietly. "If we do nothing, then in 3 months those students turn in their assignments and their professors grade them, and the best plans get implemented. Earth becomes a smoking ruin, and humanity joins 30 other extinct species in the Zephron history books. At least this way we have a chance." Jake nodded, but did not trust himself to speak. He kept thinking about one detail from the intercepted files that haunted him. Several students had included notes about preserving some human cultural artifacts for museums, not because they valued human culture, but because they thought future Zephron students might want to study the extinct species. Earth art and literature and music would become curiosities in alien museums, and that would be all that remained of 8 billion lives. The meeting continued for 6 more hours as every detail of the mission was examined and refined and questioned. Carson insisted on multiple backup plans and escape routes, even though everyone knew that if things went badly, there would be no escape. Zephyros Prime was deep in enemy territory, and the fold drive could only make one jump before needing a full recharge that would take hours. The strike team would be on their own. As the meeting finally broke up and people started filing out, Carson called for everyone's attention one last time. "I want to be clear about something, and this mission is not about revenge. This is about survival and deterrence and sending a message. We are not going there to kill students or massacre innocents. We are going there to destroy their research and expose their practices, and make them think twice before they ever target another species. We are going to be better than they are." Ryan Foster nodded in agreement. "Minimal casualties and maximum impact. We are teachers today, people, and we are going to give them an education they will never forget." The room emptied slowly, and Carson stood alone, looking at the holographic display of Zephyros Prime. In 72 hours, humanity would either prove that they were a force to be reckoned with, or they would provoke an enemy that could wipe them out. It was a gamble, but doing nothing was not an option. The Zephrons needed to learn that some homework assignments fight back, and that lesson was about to begin. The ESS Retribution dropped out of fold space at the edge of the Zephyros system, and for a moment the only sound on the bridge was the quiet hum of the ship systems cooling down from the jump. Captain Amy Sullivan stood at the command station watching the blue-green planet grow larger on the main view screen, and she felt her heart pounding in her chest. They had just traveled 47 light-years in the blink of an eye using technology that the Zephrons did not even know existed, and now they were deep in enemy territory with no backup and no way home until the fold drive recharged. "Their sensor technology is exactly as outdated as we predicted, Lieutenant," Danny Webb reported from his station, and his voice was steady, despite the tension in the air. "We might as well be invisible to them, and their defense satellites are not even looking in our direction." Amy nodded and checked the mission clock. They had exactly 18 hours before the progress presentation day began at the Zephron Imperial Academy, and that was when the strike team would make their move. 18 hours to prepare and to position the ship and to make sure that every single detail of the plan was perfect, because there would be no second chances. Down in the deployment, Bay Ryan Foster was doing final equipment checks with his strike team. 50 men and women stood in neat rows going through their gear with the practiced efficiency of veterans who had done this 1,000 times before. Each person wore a compact infiltration suit that would project a holographic disguise, making them appear to be Zephron administrative staff. The suits also emitted chemical signals that mimicked Zephron pheromones, which their research suggested was important for blending in. Remember, Ryan addressed his team and his voice carried across the bay. We are not here to start a war, and we are here to end one before it begins. Minimal casualties and maximum impact and in and out before they know what hit them. We are teachers today, people, and let us give them an education they will never forget. Sergeant Kyle Martinez checked his weapon for the third time, and it was a compact plasma rifle that had been designed to look like nothing more than a standard data pad when scanned by Zephron security systems. The weapons had been tested extensively back on Earth, but this would be their first real world use, and Kyle just hoped the damn things actually worked as advertised. Tech specialist Megan Torres sat cross-legged on the deck with her neural interface active and her eyes glazed over as she navigated through virtual space. She had been studying the Zephron computer networks for the past week, and what she found had amazed her. Their security was laughable compared to Earth systems, and it was like they had never considered that anyone would dare to attack them on their home world. Arrogance had made them sloppy, and that sloppiness would be their downfall. I have got the Academy network mapped, Megan announced, and her voice pulled everyone's attention. Their security is based on physical barriers and genetic locks, but their digital defenses are practically non-existent. Once we are inside the building, I can access everything from anywhere. Student records and research databases and communication systems and even environmental controls. It is like they never heard of cyber warfare. Ryan walked over to where Megan sat and looked at the holographic display she had projected. How long to wipe all their data on Earth and the other target species? If I have a direct connection, maybe 10 minutes, Megan said. Remotely it would take longer, but we have time. The real challenge will be planting the virus without them detecting it until after we are gone. Can you do it? Ryan asked. Megan grinned. I can do it in my sleep, sir, and these systems are child play compared to what we train on back home. The team spent the next several hours reviewing the academy, layout and memorizing extraction routes and running through contingency plans for everything that could go wrong. They studied photographs of Zephron civilians so they would know how to move and how to hold themselves, and what gestures to avoid that might mark them as outsiders. They practiced their cover stories about being visiting administrators from another campus there to observe the student presentations. Amy came down to the deployment bay 6 hours before insertion, and she gathered the team around her. I am not going to lie to you, and this is the most dangerous mission humanity has ever attempted. We are inserting into the heart of an empire that has conquered dozens of worlds, and we are doing it with no backup and no support. If things go wrong, we might not make it back. But what you are doing today will echo across the galaxy for generations. You are showing every species out there that Earth does not bow down, and that humans fight back, and that we will not go quietly into extinction. The team responded with quiet determination. And there were no brave speeches or dramatic declarations. These were professionals who understood the stakes and who had volunteered knowing they might not come home. That was enough. The stolen Zephron shuttle launched from the Retribution Bay 12 hours after they arrived in system, and it followed a flight path that had been extracted from intercepted civilian traffic data. To any observer, it would look like just another administrative transport heading to the Academy for the big presentation day. The shuttle codes had been copied from a legitimate vessel, and, unless someone physically inspected them, there was no way to tell they were frauds. Kyle sat in the pilot seat guiding the shuttle through the approach corridor, and he could see the Academy growing larger ahead of them. It was massive even from this distance, and a gleaming complex of towers and domes that sprawled across several square miles. Thousands of young Zephrons were being educated there in the arts of conquest and warfare, and tactical planning and apparently genocide. The campus was beautiful in an alien way, with architecture that seemed to flow like water frozen in time. We are being scanned, Danny warned from the co-pilot seat. Standard security protocols and nothing invasive. The shuttle systems responded automatically with the stolen codes, and a moment later they received clearance to land at the visitor platform. Just like that, they were in, and nobody had questioned them and nobody had raised an alarm. The Zephrons really did believe they were untouchable on their own world. The landing platform was busy with activity as other shuttles arrived carrying what appeared to be visiting dignitaries and academic observers. The Progress Presentation Day was clearly a big event, and one that drew attention from across the Zephron Empire. Ryan could see aliens in elaborate robes that probably indicated high academic rank, mixing with others in what looked like military uniforms. Everyone was excited and animated and completely unaware that humans were walking among them. Disguises. Active, Ryan ordered, and the team activated their infiltration suits. The holographic projectors flickered to life, and suddenly 50 humans looked like 50 Zephrons. The disguises were not perfect up close, but from a distance they would pass inspection. The team filed out of the shuttle, moving with purpose but not urgency, and they blended into the crowd, heading toward the main academy building. Megan kept her neural interface active, monitoring security channels and ready to alert the team if anything seemed wrong. So far everything is clean, and security is focused on managing the crowd and checking credentials at the building entrances. No alerts and no warnings and no indication they suspect anything. They reached the main entrance, and Ryan presented the forged credentials that identified him as Administrator Zekith from the Eastern Regional Campus. The security guard barely glanced at the documents before waving them through, and he was more interested in flirting with a female guard at the next checkpoint than doing his job properly. Once inside the building, the team split into predetermined groups. Ryan took 20 operators toward the main lecture hall where the presentations would be held. Megan led another 15 toward the central data center, where she would physically access their network. Kyle took the remaining 15 to secure their extraction route and establish fallback positions in case things went sideways. The academy corridors were filled with students rushing between classes and professors engaged in animated discussions and administrative staff carrying data pads and looking harried. Nobody paid any attention to the visitors who moved through the halls with quiet confidence. The infiltration suits were working perfectly, and the chemical pheromones were masking their human scent. Ryan reached the observation gallery above Lecture Hall 7-12, and he could see through the transparent floor down into the auditorium below. The room was massive, with stadium seating that could hold several hundred observers. At the front was a presentation stage with holographic projectors and display screens. Students were already gathering along with their professor, who Ryan recognized from intelligence photos as Instructor Vexil. "This is it," Ryan said quietly into his comm. "We are in position, and Megan, how long until you can access their system?" "I am at the data center now," Megan responded. "Give me 5 minutes to bypass their physical security, and then another 10 to get into their network. Once I am in, I will signal you." Ryan settled in to wait and watched as more students filed into the lecture hall below. They were young and eager and completely oblivious to the fact that their homework assignment had been intercepted. They laughed and joked with each other and compared notes on their projects. Some of them looked nervous about presenting, while others seemed confident and excited. They were just Ryan Foster did not bother with stealth when he pushed open the doors to Lecture Hall 712 and walked straight down the center aisle with his team following behind him in tight formation. The holographic disguises flickered off one by one, revealing humans in full combat gear, standing in the heart of the Zephron Imperial Academy, and the effect was instantaneous. Students gasped and several dropped their data pads, and Professor Vexil, who had been reviewing notes at his podium, froze, with his mouth hanging open in shock. "Impossible," Vexil breathed, and his voice carried in the sudden silence. "The humans are primitive, and you should not even have faster than light travel, and you cannot be here." "Surprise," Ryan said, and his voice was flat and cold. "Class is in session, and today's lesson is about underestimating your homework assignment." He gestured toward the large holographic display that was still showing a student presentation about crushing human resistance with orbital bombardment. The images showed Earth cities burning, and casualty projections scrolling past in neat columns and resource allocation charts that treated human lives like numbers on a spreadsheet. Ryan felt rage boiling in his chest, but he kept his voice steady. 2,300 casualties in the first wave, and all major population centers destroyed within 72 hours, and agricultural infrastructure contaminated to ensure Long-term food shortage and very thorough work. What grade were you expecting for this student, Krell? The young Zephron student who had been presenting stood frozen at the podium, and his purple skin had gone several shades darker with what Ryan assumed was fear. The student tried to speak, but no words came out, and he just stared at the humans with wide, terrified eyes. Let me tell you what grade you actually earned. Ryan continued, and his voice grew harder. You get an F for failure, and failure to understand that your target species would intercept your communications, and failure to consider that we might object to being exterminated for a school project, and failure to realize that some species do not go quietly when you plan their genocide. Megan's voice came through the comm directly into Ryan's ear. Sir, I am streaming this live to every screen in the academy, and we have over 10,000 students and faculty watching right now across the entire campus. Good. Ryan said out loud, so everyone in the room could hear. My name is Colonel Ryan Foster of the United Earth Defense Forces, and your students plan to kill 8 billion people for a grade point average. They treated genocide like it was a mathematics problem, and sat around calculating how many of my people they could murder most efficiently. So let me teach you all some new math. He activated his data pad and overrode the room display systems with casual ease that made several Zephron students gasp. New images appeared showing complex data streams and security logs and file directories. In the last 3 hours, we have infiltrated your most secure facility and walked right past your defensive networks and accessed your central database. We erased every single file you had on Earth and on 47 other species you were studying as potential targets. Your research on human military capabilities is gone, and your tactical assessments are deleted, and your centuries of intelligence gathering has vanished. All those student projects about how to kill us most efficiently no longer exist. Professor Vexel found his voice, and it came out as an angry hiss. This is an act of war against the Zephron Empire, and you have no idea what you have done. No, Captain Amy Sullivan said as she stepped forward from the back of the team. This is an act of defense, and you declared war the moment you assigned our extinction as homework. We are just providing feedback on your curriculum, and apparently your teaching methods need serious revision. Another student near the front of the room stood up, and his voice shook with outrage. You are breaking into our academy and threatening students and destroying our work, and you are the monsters here. Ryan laughed, but there was no humor in it. We are monsters, and you were literally planning to sterilize our entire planet with biological weapons, and you were going to poison our water supply and redirect asteroids into our cities, and hunt down survivors with robots. But we are the monsters because we objected to your homework assignment. Let me be very clear about something, and we did not come here to kill anyone today. We came here to teach you a lesson. Specialist Greg Palmer activated another display showing lines of code flowing across multiple screens. We have also uploaded something special into your network, and it is a virus that will remain dormant until any Zephron military vessel approaches Earth's solar system without our explicit permission. When that happens, the virus activates and broadcasts the complete contents of your extinction homework assignment across every communication channel in the galactic community. Every species out there will know what you teach your students, and they will know that the Zephron Empire trains its future officers by having them practice genocide on innocent civilizations. The room had gone deathly quiet, and Ryan could see the implications sinking in on Zephron faces. Their empire reputation was built on strength and military superiority, but this would expose them as something far worse. They were not conquerors fighting worthy opponents, and they were predators who picked on species that could not fight back and taught their children to view mass murder as an academic exercise. You cannot do this, another professor said from the back of the room. The galactic community will not care about your accusations, and we are a recognized power. Amy pulled up more data showing archived assignments from previous years. We found your old homework files in the Kralix extinction assignment from 312 years ago in the Centauri Elimination Project from 206 years ago in the Vorn Eradication Study from 143 years ago. At least 30 species that no longer exist because they were practice targets for your students. The galactic community might not care about accusations, but they will definitely care about evidence, and we have centuries of it. Sergeant Kyle Martinez had been monitoring external communications, and his voice came through the team channel. Sir, campus security is mobilizing, and we have about 4 minutes before they reach this building. Multiple units converging on our position. That is plenty of time, Ryan said, and then he turned back to address not just the students in front of him, but the thousands watching across the campus. Here is your new assignment, and this one is not for a grade. You are going to learn what happens when your homework fights back. You are going to teach future students that Earth is permanently off limits. You are going to understand that humanity does not beg for mercy, because we take it from anyone stupid enough to threaten us. And you are going to remember this moment every single day for the rest of your lives. This is not over, Bexil said, and his voice was shaking with fury. The Empire will respond to this insult, and you have made a terrible mistake coming here. You are absolutely right, Amy said calmly. This is not over, because if we detect even one threat from Zephyros Prime in the future, and if we intercept even one plan targeting Earth or any other species, and if you continue using extinction as a teaching tool, then we will come back. But next time, we will not come for your academy, and we will come for your government and your military command and your infrastructure. Unlike you, we will not treat it like homework, and we will treat it like war, and you will learn the difference. The doors at the back of the lecture hall burst open, and Zephron security forces poured in with weapons drawn, but Ryan's team was already moving toward the side exit that Kyle had secured earlier. The security forces hesitated, unsure whether to fire in a room full of students, and that moment of hesitation was all the humans needed. Oh, and Professor Ryan called back as his team reached the exit. Earth is not a primitive species, and we have just been waiting for a reason to show what we can really do. Congratulations on giving us that reason, and class is dismissed. The team sprinted through the corridors with alarms blaring all around them, and Zephron security struggling to coordinate a response to something they had never trained for. The infiltration suits were abandoned now, and there was no point in stealth anymore. Megan guided them through the building using the Academy-owned security feeds to avoid the largest concentrations of guards. They burst out onto the landing platform where their shuttle was, waiting with engines already hot. Kyle had sent advanced team members ahead to secure it, and they provided covering fire as the rest of the team scrambled aboard. Plasma bolts flashed overhead, but the Zephron guards were shooting to disable the shuttle, not kill the humans, and that tactical mistake gave Earth forces the seconds they needed. The shuttle lifted off as more security forces arrived, and Danny pushed the engines to maximum as they climbed toward orbit. Behind them, the Zephron Imperial Academy was in chaos, with thousands of students and faculty trying to process what had just happened, and security forces scrambling to mount some kind of pursuit. The ESS Retribution was waiting at the extraction point, and the shuttle docked with practiced efficiency. Amy was already on the bridge, ordering the full drive to be charged, and Danny reported that Zephron military vessels were scrambling from orbit, but they were too slow and too confused. Full drive ready, came the call from engineering, and Amy did not hesitate. Jump now, she ordered, and reality twisted, and the Retribution vanished, leaving the Zephron star. The ESS Retribution dropped back into Earth space 3 days after the mission, and the full drive was smoking from the emergency jump, but they had made it home without a single casualty. Captain Amy Sullivan stood on the bridge, watching her home planet grow larger on the view screen, and she felt something loosen in her chest that had been tight since they first entered Zephron space. They had done the impossible, and walked into the heart of an alien empire and walked back out again, and now the whole galaxy was talking about what 50 humans had accomplished. Director Benjamin Carson was waiting for them in the main briefing room at Earth Command, and behind him the wall. Screens showed news feeds from across known space. The images were remarkable, and footage of the classroom confrontation had somehow leaked despite Zephron attempts to suppress it, and now every species with faster-than-light communication was watching humans stand up to the mighty Zephron Empire. They are calling it the classroom, Incident Carson said as the strike team filed into the room. 50 humans walked into the most prestigious military academy in Zephron space and humiliated them in front of 10,000 students and faculty, and walked out without firing a single shot. The galaxy has not seen anything like this in centuries. Commander Helen Pierce pulled up diplomatic channels on the secondary screens, and the sheer volume of incoming messages was staggering. We are receiving communications from over 60 different species, and many of them were previous homework assignments that managed to survive the Zephron student projects. They are calling Earth Action the first real act of resistance against Zephron expansion in 300 years. Some of them want to form alliances, and others just want to thank us for exposing what the Zephrons really are. What about the Zephrons themselves? Ryan asked, and he was exhausted, but needed to know if they had just started. a war that Earth could not win. Lisa Bennett brought up a recording of an official Zephron government broadcast. Their High Council issued a formal protest calling our actions an unprovoked assault on an educational facility, and they are demanding reparations and an apology. But here is the interesting part, and they are not threatening military retaliation. They are being very careful with their language and very measured in their response, because they do not know what else we can do. Amy said, "We prove that we can strike anywhere we want and any time we want and bypass all their defenses. We have technology they did not think existed and capabilities they never anticipated. They are scared." Carson nodded slowly. "Our intelligence analysts agree, and the Zephrons are conducting a complete reassessment of Earth as a potential threat. The Advanced Conquest Studies program has been suspended indefinitely pending what they call a comprehensive review of teaching methodologies. Professor Vexel has been removed from his position and is facing an internal investigation. And most importantly, all files and references to Earth as a target species have been purged from their military databases." Jake Morrison, who had discovered the original transmission, spoke up from his position near the back of the room. "It is not just fear, though, and I have been monitoring their internal communications. There is something else in their response, and it is respect. They are angry, yes, and humiliated, definitely, but they are also treating Earth differently now. We are no longer categorized as a primitive species to be studied, and we are listed as a potential peer adversary." Megan pulled up analysis data from the virus she had planted in the Zephron network. "The virus is still dormant and waiting for any Zephron military vessel to approach our solar system. But what is interesting is that we are also getting feedback from the monitoring protocols I embedded. The Zephrons have reclassified Earth in their strategic databases from negligible threat to high-risk engagement. They have noted our full drive technology and our infiltration capabilities and our cyber warfare proficiency. They are studying us now, but not as homework, and they are studying us as equals." The room fell quiet as everyone absorbed what that meant, and for the first time in human history, Earth was being taken seriously by a major galactic power. Not because humans had asked politely or tried to negotiate or demonstrated peaceful intentions, but because they had shown that threatening Earth came with consequences. The Zephrons had learned that some species bite back, and that lesson had cost them dearly in prestige and reputation. "What happens now?" Lieutenant Danny Webb asked, and he had been the one monitoring sensors during the mission. "Do we just wait to see if they retaliate?" Carson stood and walked to the center of the room where everyone could see him. "Now we make sure this never happens again to anyone. We are not going to hide, and we are not going to wait for the next threat. We are going to expand our defense fleet with the budget increase that the World Council just approved unanimously. We are going to share our full drive technology with species that have been victimized by the Zephrons and help them build their own defenses. We are going to form alliances with civilizations that want to stand together against empires that treat other species as practice targets." Helen added more details about the diplomatic initiatives already underway. "We have had preliminary talks with the Centauri survivors who escaped their extinction event 200 years ago, and with remnants of the Kralik civilization, and with a dozen other species that the Zephrons targeted. They all want to coordinate defensive strategies and share intelligence. Earth is becoming the center of something bigger than just our own survival." Paul Richards brought up technical schematics showing new ship designs and weapon systems. "We are also accelerating our technology development programs, and if the Zephrons do decide to come after us, we will be ready. But more than that, we are going to make sure that any species threatened by extinction, Homework has the tools to fight." Back Ryan thought about the young Zephron students he had confronted in that lecture hall, and their faces when they realized that their homework assignment had walked through their door. Part of him had felt bad for them because they were just kids following their culture programming and doing what their teachers told them was normal and acceptable. But then he remembered the casualty projections and the clinical discussions of efficient murder and the complete lack of empathy for 8 billion human lives. "They learned something valuable today," Ryan said quietly. "Every predator species eventually meets prey that fights back, and the Zephrons have been hunting helpless targets for so long, they forgot that lesson. Maybe now they will think twice before assigning genocide as homework." Carson raised a glass of water since they were still technically on duty. "To Earth and to humanity and to teaching the galaxy that some homework assignments destroy the class instead of the other way around." The team raised their own glasses, and the toast was simple. but it carried the weight of what they had accomplished. In the weeks and months that followed, the classroom incident became legendary across known space. The Zephron Empire quietly withdrew military forces from dozens of border systems, and their government issued new directives about species classification and threat assessment. The Advanced Conquest Studies program was permanently shut down and replaced with something the Zephrons called diplomatic engagement theory, which sounded much less genocidal. More importantly, other species began to stand up to Zephron. Intimidation, and several former client states declared independence, knowing that they now had Earth backing them up. The balance of power in the galaxy was shifting, and humanity had become a symbol of resistance against casual cruelty and institutionalized genocide. In academic institutions across Zephron, space, a new case study was added to military strategy courses, and it was called the Earth Miscalculation, and it analyzed how a species classified as primitive had infiltrated their most secure facility and exposed their darkest practices to the entire galaxy. Students were required to study what went wrong and how assumptions about technological inferiority had led to catastrophic intelligence failure. The lesson was clear: and never underestimate a species just because they seem less advanced. Earth became known by a new name in galactic trade languages, and the translators struggled with the exact meaning, but the closest equivalent was the untouchables. Not because humans were isolated or avoided, but because threatening Earth had become recognized as a mistake that cost more than any potential benefit. Species that had once ignored humanity now sought trade agreements and cultural exchanges and military cooperation. Jake Morrison still monitored deep space transmissions from his station, on Earth Defense Station Vigilant. But now he was looking for different things. Not threats against Earth, but threats against any species that might need help. Humanity had learned that the galaxy was full of predators, but it was also full of potential allies and friends and civilizations worth protecting. Helen Pierce stood beside him one day, looking at the same screens, and she smiled. We were supposed to be homework, but we became the lesson instead. Jake nodded and thought about how close Earth had come to extinction, and how one intercepted transmission had changed everything. Sometimes survival came down to luck and determination, and the willingness to fight back when fighting back seemed impossible. The Zephrons had wanted to teach their students about conquest and extinction and efficient genocide, but in the end they learned something far more valuable. They